playable. We're talking about characters frozen in T-poses, cars spawning out of nowhere and launching into the sky, textures just refusing to load, and the crashes. Oh, the constant, frustrating crashes that would just delete your
Old as just another game. It was pitched as the next step, a new benchmark for the entire
The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which, is still considered one of the greatest games ever made. So when they announced their next big thing, the gaming world didn't just pay attention. We all
game-changing masterpiece from a studio everyone loved. And on the other hand, the brutal reality.
Today, we are diving into the wild story of a video game that was supposed to define a generation. Instead, it became one of the biggest cautionary tales in the history of entertainment. Yep, we're talking about Cyberpunk 2077, a saga of unbelievable hype, a truly catastrophic launch, and the fallout that nobody saw coming.
The whole story really comes down to this massive, massive gap. On one hand, you had the promise, a game-changing masterpiece from a studio everyone loved. And on the other hand, the brutal reality, a broken, buggy mess that was so bad it was literally pulled from digital stores. So how on earth did we get from one to the other? Well, that's what we're going to break down.
Okay, so first things first. To really understand the scale of this failure, you have to understand why the expectations were through the roof. The hype for this game wasn't just big, it was colossal. It was an event. And the hype really starts with the name, CD Projekt Red. See, before Cyberpunk, this studio was basically golden. They were the masterminds behind The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which, is still considered one of the greatest games ever made. So when they announced their next big thing, the gaming world didn't just pay attention. We all just assumed another masterpiece was on the way.
And boy, did they promise the world. They talked about Night City, this huge, living, breathing, futuristic city. They promised us deep stories where our choices would actually matter, and graphics that would absolutely push our consoles and PCs to the limit. This wasn't sold as just another game. It was pitched as the next step, a new benchmark for the entire industry.
And then, after years of waiting, after multiple delays, December 2020 finally rolled around. Launch day. This was supposed to be a massive celebration for gamers everywhere. But instead, it was the start of an absolute nightmare.
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The game came out, and almost instantly, the internet starts flooding with reports that something is very, very wrong.
And this pretty much sums up the chaos. For a ton of people, the game was just unplayable. We're talking about characters frozen in T-poses, cars spawning out of nowhere and launching into the sky, textures just refusing to load, and the crashes. Oh, the constant, frustrating crashes that would just delete your progress. The dream of the super immersive world was completely shattered by a technical disaster.
And this wasn't just a problem for a few people. It was an absolute catastrophe on the consoles most people actually owned at the time, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. They sold millions of copies for platforms that, it turns out, just could not run the game properly. It simply didn't work as advertised.
So naturally, the problems inside the game quickly spiraled into a full-blown crisis in the real world, for the company, for the industry, you name it. And the fallout was incredibly swift and unbelievably severe. Just look at how fast this all unraveled. It's kind of mind-blowing. The game drops on December 10th, and the bug reports are immediate. Just 4 days later, the developer CD Projekt Red is already putting out an apology and offering refunds. But then, only 3 days after that, we're talking just 1 week after launch, things hit a level that was truly historic. The reaction from companies like Sony and Microsoft was something the industry had, well, basically never seen before. It was a huge signal that this wasn't just a buggy launch. No, this was seen as a massive breach of trust with consumers.
And here it is. The bombshell, the single biggest consequence. Sony, which runs the biggest console marketplace in the world, just completely pulled Cyberpunk 2077 from its store. You literally could not buy it digitally on PlayStation. I mean, that was an earthquake moment. It was a public statement that the product was just not acceptable.
So what's the legacy here? I mean, even after years of patches and fixes, that launch forever changed how we see this game, and maybe even the industry as a whole. The game's whole identity was just rewritten overnight. It went from being hyped as the game of the decade to becoming the poster child for what happens when your marketing writes checks that the actual product can't cash.
And that's really the key lesson here, isn't it? Cyberpunk 2077 became the living definition of overhype. It was a painful, real-world example of the danger of building expectations so high that anything less than absolute perfection feels like a failure, especially when the thing is fundamentally broken.
Now, to be fair, the story didn't just end there in a pile of glitches. CD Projekt Red did spend the next few years working hard to fix the game. And you know what? Through huge updates and an amazing expansion, they really did turn it into the game it was probably meant to be all along. For a lot of people who play it today, it's a fantastic experience.
But, and it's a big but, that redemption doesn't just erase what happened. Despite how good the game is now, that initial launch was such a monumental disaster that its place in history is pretty much set. It will always serve as a reminder of what can go wrong.
And all of this leaves us with one last big thought. This story is about so much more than just one video game. It really makes you ask a bigger question, right? About the whole relationship between the people who make games, how they sell them to us, and us, the players. When that giant hype machine gets out of control and crashes, who's the one that really pays the price in the end?